Alrighty then my friends, welcome back to another Star Wars video. It is I coming at you once again, your friend and your favourite galactic hostess, Star Wars Meg. So today, we're not going to be talking about Star Wars movies, we're not even talking about upcoming TV shows, but instead, we've got an update for one of the most anticipated Star Wars video games. No, not that one. Not that one either. There you go, that's the one we're going to discuss, Star Wars Eclipse by Quantic Dream. Despite it having just one cinematic trailer nearly 5 years ago, it is still heavily discussed. Every few months we get updates, usually quite negative ones, and the response is always very strong. There is still a contingent of fans waiting with bated breath, just based on that one trailer alone, and I have to be honest, I don't blame them. This is a video game promising to do the most insane things in the context of the Star Wars universe. It's made by Quantic Dream. Every choice you make has its own unique consequence. That means alternate cutscenes, multiple endings. Every decision you make shapes your personal experience. And as I say, that very first cinematic trailer was very impressive. It showcased a side of the High Republic we hadn't seen yet. With hindsight, it promised a very different story to something like The Acolyte and most of the High Republic books. And now that Lucasfilm is more or less finished with that publishing initiative and The Acolyte has been cancelled, when Star Wars Eclipse eventually releases, it might very well be the final installment of the High Republic. But news for the game has been rather mixed, and the same can be said of today's updates. Back in April, Mike Straw of Inside Gaming revealed that progress had effectively stopped due to lack of employees on the project. And a few days ago, he said the situation hasn't improved. With Summer Games Fest just around the corner, he said don't expect anything for Eclipse. To make things worse, insider Tom Henderson says this: it's not going well and there is a lot of frustration. But despite all of this really bad news, one insider is surprisingly optimistic, and they've revealed information for what the story of the game is actually about, and a little update on the game's progress. So, according to the latest rumours, Star Wars Eclipse is very far along, and they say that when it comes to supposed issues between Lucasfilm and Quantic Dream, the rumours are true. Nonetheless, the game will absolutely still come out, and it still has a very large scope. They're not cutting back. And then we come on to some of the juicy information. There are multiple lead characters, as you play with different points of view in a larger grand-scale story. One of these leads is a traditional young Jedi, idealistic, good-hearted, whose limits are tested as he enters into morally questionable and dangerous situations in an unexplored region of the galaxy. As for one of the other leads, she is a non-force-sensitive girl who, much like Rey from the sequel trilogy, is a scavenger on a junk planet. But unlike Rey, she's not alone, but they do describe her as poor and starved. And the third character we now know about is described as a kind old man, a surrogate grandfather for the aforementioned girl, someone who's protected her since she was a baby. But now, the old man is sick. And this is the interesting bit. They say he's got an illness that might just radicalize her into starting a revolution, even if that means going up against powerful beings who possess the Force. Now at face value, without any context, this last bit makes very little sense. But I gave it some thought, tried to piece together some known information with some of what's in the trailer, and I think what's being implied is that the granddad has been poisoned by one of these Force beings. Is it the species that people assumed might have been the Grisk? The mysterious alien race bashing on their drums, awaiting their chosen one to emerge from the black liquid. And in this way, is Star Wars Eclipse going down the horror route? Are they doing something inspired by 28 Days Later? What's the deal with this? Is it possible this is a threat the Jedi have to snuff out? And is that going to feed into the varying perspectives in the game? You can either play as the principled young Jedi, or try your luck as a scavenger on a junk planet. And what's really fascinating is that, if we assume the game is canon, which I think it is, it's going to expand our understanding of some of the threats the Jedi were dealing with 2 centuries before the Phantom Menace. Not just dark side users and wannabe Sith, but maybe an entire alien species that poses a viral threat to the galaxy. So that is some pretty big information on the plot front, but did you notice they mentioned tensions between Quantic Dream and Lucasfilm? As Bespin Bulletin writes, that's quite a statement, considering video game development is extremely complex. Nothing is certain until it's in people's hands. We have seen a number of Star Wars games get cancelled even though pre-orders were being taken. A great example is Star Wars First Assault. So they're doubtful there is any real tension between the two studios, and if anything, it's just the leaker's personal opinion. But something which I'm curious about when it comes to Star Wars Eclipse is, has some of the story been changed due to the release of The Acolyte? That is arguably the biggest High Republic project to date. There have been a ton of books and comics, even Young Jedi Adventures, but in terms of the one that made any kind of ripple, despite its low viewership, it's the controversial series by Leslie Headland. There was a bit of speculation a while back about maybe an incorporation of Chimera or the Brendok Witches. I really don't know how that's going to work, but I'm sure the Lucasfilm Story Group wants to make sure it's consistent. But my impression based on these plot leaks is that while it takes place during the High Republic, and while it does seem to have characters like Yoda, the story is very much going to be standalone. It might not intersect with Venestra Row, Chimera, the twins, it might be adjacent to what's going on elsewhere, but it might not fully connect. And another huge consideration is that the final gameplay footage might not look anything like the initial teaser trailer for this game. It was cinematic. It was just meant to show off some flashy concepts, some of the species, maybe some of the characters we're gonna see. But because it's been so long, and there have been so many changes, a lot has happened in Star Wars canon, I wouldn't be surprised if the final version is very different. And so finally, my dear friends, while we're on the subject of Star Wars gaming, a little tidbit for Star Wars Jedi 3. The sequel to Jedi Survivor coming at some point in the next couple of years, and now we have confirmation that the third game is going to see a time jump, and it's going to focus on an older Cal Kestis. And not just this, Disney just revealed they have plans for him beyond the games. Now the fan reaction to this has been rather interesting. You would assume that most people would be happy about this, because they've wanted to see him in live action for years, but the response has been rather mixed. Some fans weren't too happy about this update. They see it as a spoiler that he's going to survive the Jedi trilogy, but if we're honest, was that ever really in question? Due to the success of the first two games, it's no surprise they want to do more with him. And the third Jedi game could be revealed sooner than you think. It might be this week at Summerfest. But in this game, and beyond it, it does sound like Disney wants to do more with the main character. It sounds like there are plans for him to appear in future Disney Plus shows, be they animated or live action. It's very clear that the success of the Jedi games so far means that Cal Kestis is a huge Disney Star Wars asset. But with that said, my dear friends, those are the latest Star Wars gaming updates. A bit of a change of pace for this one. If you want some Star Wars movie updates, go check out yesterday's video. We had some huge leaks for Star Wars Starfighter. But if you enjoyed this one, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and may the Force be with you, always.